Assalamualaikum. I'm Nana, your host. Today we'll be having an exclusive interview with Professor Dr Engku Rabiah Adawiah, who is here for the 17th Regional Sharia Scholars Dialogue, or known as Muzakara here in Singapore. Professor is a professor in Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance in International Islamic University Malaysia. She is the Deputy Chairman in Shari'ah Advisory Council Malaysia and also a member of the Shari'ah Advisory Council and Securities Commission Malaysia. Professor Dr. Engku Rabiah Adawiah has also done extensive research on capital market services in Islam, Takaful and Islamic jurisprudence. She was awarded in 2014 and 2017 under Outstanding Individual Contribution to Islamic Finance by Deloitte as Top 10 Women in Islamic Finance, and from 2017 till 2021, she was a Top 10 Most Influential Woman in Finance. Wow, Professor, that is a very long list of credentials there, mashallah. Yes, welcome to Singapore. How was the masterclass earlier?
Alhamdulillah, it's very good, eye-opening.
Yeah, how's your Singapore visit? Is this I believe this is not your first time here in Singapore?
Yeah, it's not my first time, but it has been quite some time since my last visit. I think that was before the BKP, MCO and whatnot. Yeah, so it's been quite some time since my last visit there.
So about 4 years, 3 years, 4 years, right? Yeah, since the last lockdown. So okay, tapping into your expertise and your wisdom, I would like to know, would you mind sharing what are the significant challenges we face here in Islamic finance in gaining broader acceptance? And also, has this level of acceptance evolved over the decade, and especially in overcoming hurdles that that prevent or rather gatekeeping Islamic finance from growing?
Okay, I think one of the biggest challenge that Islamic finance is facing is more in terms of the awareness and also promotion that people have been doing about Islamic finance, because most of the time if we look into the social media, sometimes there is like negative promotion. I'm not sure if that's the correct terminology, but sometimes Islamic finance has been portrayed in a negative light because of the perception that Islamic finance is not really quote unquote Islamic, and to some extent what I can say is that Islamic finance is not perfect because the ecosystem and also the infrastructure in which Islamic finance is operating in is perhaps not perfect. We are still operating in a system, an ecosystem where the mainstream is still conventional, interest-based financial system, so we are not operating in a perfect environment. So because of that, some of the products that we have in Islamic finance may not be an ideal product, and sometimes it may also be some kind of compromise between the pragmatic and practical reality and the ideal solution. So that to some extent has caused some kind of negative kind of perception towards Islamic finance product. But as the market grows and as Islamic finance gain more towards more acceptance, or more when the market share grows, and that allows for Islamic finance to actually dictate some of the products better, and some countries like Malaysia, we have quite facilitative legal framework that enables Islamic finance product to be rolled out with better features that complies more or better complies with some of the the ideal Sharia requirements. So we can see that we are perhaps moving from the previous Islamic Finance 1.0, and then we move to Islamic Finance 2.0, and then the range of products that we can offer is also more variety. And another thing that helps Islamic Finance to have more say is we have widened up our source of funds with the growth of Islamic social finance, we have source of funds which is actually having zero cost. Like we have wakaf funds, we have zakat funds, we have also some other sadaqah funds. So these have zero cost of fund, and because of that, Islamic social finance instruments can allow for the provision of Islamic finance instruments, which is cheap and sometimes like Qard Hasan with no profit charge, no interest charge, and also no profit charge. So that is an advantage because we are no longer like dictated by the normal depositor expectation of some returns and things like that. Right? So that is another thing that is helpful. And also, I think another thing is with the new development in Islamic finance, Islamic social finance, and the milestone that we have achieved, maybe we can create more awareness and we can have better promotion of the good sides of Islamic finance, and hopefully we can have a really functional and also not really perfect, but a better range of products where we are no longer too much tied with the debt-based instruments, where we have a more balanced portfolio, and then we're able to reach out to bigger audience. I think we are talking a lot about how the Islamic social finance has helped to reach to the previously unserved segments of the society. And with, I think, there's also a strong movement for Islamic wealth and also financial management, wealth management and planning. So that will widen out the scope and like full range of Islamic financial services and also investment instruments to Muslim or other investors.
Yeah. I think that's great because I think we know that for Islamic finance to grow, it has to firstly be receptive towards the community that it is actually targeted for. Then only when that targeted community accepts it, then it is easier to promote to the bigger audience out there, right? And then that is when the promotion of the products and the concept of Islamic finance being, I wouldn't say relevant, but be more receptive. That because I think to achieve that level of perfection is going to be difficult or almost impossible.
It is possible, but then we need to have a two-way street because like you said, we are looking at the perception of or deceptiveness of the audience and the public, but at the same time we need to also communicate to the public about what would be the ideal situation, because sometimes the members of the public themselves are being influenced by the norm in the society, and the norm and culture of the society as of now is dictated by the conventional systems. So there's a culture of rent seeking, without taking risks. So because that's the way conventional system is working, and in order to stay competitive, sometimes Islamic finance have to sort of try to also provide to match the kind of returns and risk return profile that the conventional market is doing, but that's not really what Islamic finance is all about. Supposedly Islamic finance is about a fair distribution of risk and return between both sides, whether deficit or surplus sides. So that requires a communication to the public that what they have now as the accepted norm and culture is not really Islamic, and they need to look at like win-win deal rather than a more skewed kind of risk-return distribution between the surplus and the deficit side. And I think this is also to some extent facilitated by the fact that the conventional finance had suffered a lot, especially during the credit crisis, where I think a lot of even non-Muslims and those involved in the conventional finance space, talking about the ugly face of capitalism and how they talk about, trying to do things differently. They're talking about ethical finance and finance for good, okay, that kind of thing. So we can see that they are sort of not like too much into the old kind of capitalism, maximization of profit. They are looking also into some of the principles of Islamic finance that now be more palatable even to a conventional market, right? So what more to like an Islamic environment, Islamic market? So that would be like something that is helpful in actually allowing me to do the two-way communication. We actually appreciate the way the society and also the consumer base responded to us, but we are also looking at how we can respond back and communicate to the consumer base, also the public, as to what is the real thing that we need to do. Just like now we're talking about, like, let's say the SDG movement, they say that what we're doing now is not sustainable, we have to move towards sustainability. At the same thing, we can tell them that, well, the culture here is not sustainable, it's not healthy. Actually, we need to move to another more sustainable and healthy and fair culture of how we share the risk and return between the capital provider or the capital owner and the user of the money.
Yeah, with that being said, in terms of the culture and all that, how do you envision, the Islamic finance principles and practices? How do you think it can be implemented here in Singapore's context?
Okay, Singapore, I think, is quite unique and obviously different from Malaysia in terms of its setup and the reality faced by the people in Singapore. Because being like Malaysia, we are Muslim majority. In Singapore, we are not Muslim majority, right? It's a Muslim minority country. But even in a Muslim majority country, we are facing problems communicating and sending the message across even to Muslim. So what more here? But to some extent, in a Muslim minority country, they have also the advantage of perhaps being more acutely aware of the distinctions that they have being Muslim, what they should observe, what they should, in terms of, to be a Muslim in a Muslim minority country, right? So that is perhaps working to get advantage to some extent. And they also have, I think, is quite a close-knit community of Muslim, and you have quite organized Muslim, societies, organizations, and institutions. So I think with Islamic finance can start with reaching out to the Muslim through the existing institutions that you have in Singapore, communicate, educate, get feedbacks, and see what are actually the real needs of the Muslim in Singapore, and try to meet those needs. Just like, people was talking about, you need to find out what are the pain points, and then find out how to actually give solutions to the pain points, so you can see how and what are those pain points for the Muslim in Singapore, and how Islamic finance can play a role. And then when we actually help the people to solve their problem, that would be something that is normally easily received. Just like we talk about, disruptions in the provision of some services previously, like Grab, compared to the previous conventional taxi or even Uber. So that's because it's solving the problem. Like in Malaysia, we have how the postal market has changed with all these, alternative delivery mechanism. So the same thing with Islamic finance, and see how Islamic finance can provide a more specialized solution to the Muslim in Singapore as compared to maybe conventional. So we can actually tap on the Islamic social finance as well, how to use the zakat money, wakaf money, and how to mobilize that towards provision of financial services to the underserved in Singapore. So if we can have something like a successful story to be told about how Islamic finance have done something to the people here, then that can be a point of reference that we can also say that this is actually also can be used for other communities as well, not necessarily for Muslim only. Like in Britain as well, when they started with their Islamic bank, right? So, I mean, they have their consumer base not only among Muslims, also from non-Muslims. So that's, I think, some of the things that perhaps we can do is.
I think that's really brilliant. Like to tap into the community's problem using the Islamic finance tools, right, to solve their problems. And then I think naturally human, we are more attracted to problem solving tools. And then when this is seen as a tool that, oh, it could actually help me, and then they'll be more open and more receptive to the idea of the Islamic finance.
Yeah.
And I think that would also, like you mentioned, attract the non-Muslim audience as well. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. So with that being said, do you have any insights or recommendations on how financial institutions like banks or insurance company here in Singapore can successfully incorporate Islamic finance into their system? Currently, because we are all conventional.
Yeah, that will require, I think, perhaps more components to be added to, because they are regulated entities, so they will require some kind of approval from the regulator. So there should be, I mean, to some extent, political will on the part of the authorities in Singapore to allow for some kind of experimentation of Islamic finance for the Singapore people. Maybe if they don't want to actually allow for like the full broad range of approval, maybe windows, or maybe one or two pilot projects. So that will require to some extent, because they are licensed institutions, unless you want to go for alternative mechanisms, just now we listened about fintech, how they actually have alternative system that is decentralized. It doesn't have to go through the regulator, which still provides some of the banking services without being a bank. Some of the insurance services without being an insurance licensed insurance provider. So that can also be an alternative for the Muslims if they don't want to, or they don't get the support from the authority to allow for licensing of Islamic financial institutions in Singapore.
Great. I think we have gathered a lot of wisdom from you. Alhamdulillah, and thank you so much for your time in answering these questions. Just before we end, I would just like to ask a little bit. This could be off record, okay? But I would like to understand your perspective on, from the masterclass earlier on, when what are your thoughts about Islamic finance going into robo-advisory or Islamic finance? Okay, we talk about Takaful here in Singapore because it doesn't exist, right? But in Indonesia, what they do is that they have a separate contract where they give to their customers or their clients for insurance. Like, okay, if you're Muslim, this is your contract. If you're a non-Muslim, this is your contract. What is your thoughts and ideas on this?
For the insurance part, I think there is the type of insurance which is closer to the Islamic insurance, which is the mutual insurance. And mutual insurance is known even from the conventional side as well. But now what is popular is the commercial insurance as opposed to mutual. So maybe you can go along that route and try to propose Islamic a mutual insurance scheme in Singapore, without naming it as Islamic Takaful, and actually it can work, I think, because mutual insurance has a lot of similarities. The only thing that you need to actually adjust is perhaps where you put your money, place money. There will be like a matter of policy where some insurance companies just invest in ethical ESG, or you can also put that kind of thing and do even screening in terms of Shariah compliance for where you place the money and things like that. On your first question, that was on
robo-advisory.
Robo-advisory, I think that is something which is to me, I'm quite open to it because it's more of using the technology, but it's not like it's facilitating the basic things, because you can put information which is standard, and that would allow for like more fast provision of advice. But things which is not really standard, that requires further Sharia deliberation, then you would still need to have your Sharia board, for example, or other necessary advice in order to cater for unique scenarios that require further deliberation, which may not be captured in the database. That because the robot will actually basically based on artificial intelligence, it will be dependent on the kind of data that you input inside. So and it has to also be something like, because we have different Sharia opinion, for example, different mazhab, so you can actually structure the system such that it will give opinion based on this particular Sharia ruling that you are preferring for the purpose of your fund, for example. Like in Malaysia, we can have robo-advisory following the Sharia resolution of our Sharia Council, for example. So that would be the parameter, the broad parameter. But sometimes things that is not clear-cut, then that will require some kind of human intervention.
Yes. Okay, Ken, thank you so much,
Okay.
Professor.
Okay.
Thank you. Alhamdulillah.